Hello everybody, welcome to my second project for CSC 842. This program is called fileintel. If you saw my last project, it was called hostintel, and it took a list of hosts and told you information about it. This does the same thing for files, and it works on file hashes, so you can use MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, and so forth. So what happens is, a lot of times when you're doing malware analysis, you might have a bunch of samples. You might have 100 or 200 samples in front of you, and you want to go through and figure out what they are to put in what piles. If you need to do a deep analysis on it with IDA disassembler, or if you just want to see what other people in the community have categorized the malware as, this tool will help you do that. So what it does is it takes an input, a list of hashes, and then the output is CSV to standard out, just like my hostintel tool. On my GitHub page, I've got everything from the help screen to how you install it. The NSRL is one of the sources. I'll talk about that in a second. If you want to install 7-zip, I give you a little pointer on running virtual env. Tell you how to run it. I give you a couple sample data sets in case you don't want to run this tool yourself. You can actually look at the input and the output. I list out the intelligence sources that this tool will look up. I give you some extra resources. So under intelligence sources for each one of these, you're going to have one under resources, and I might have more websites like to the library and so forth. The license is Creative Commons by SA. Contributing, I have a contributing document here, and I spell out how you can actually add new modules for new intelligence sources. And then just for myself, I have some to-dos down here of things I'd like to add in the future, but I just haven't gotten to that point yet. So let me show you my notes. So my goals, I had some general goals and some personal goals. My general goals for the tool is to make it useful, make it run on any operating system. That I think we did with writing this in Python. Make it modular and simple to extend. So every source that we grab an intelligence feed from is basically a plugin, just like it was in my hostintel tool. So you have fileintel here, takes a list of hashes in, and then it goes to the World Wide Web, does a lookup, gets the data, outputs to a CSV for you. These green arrows down here are what I call the modules, and I just put two for example. There's virus total and the NSRL, and I put red question mark here because you can add any modular component that you want to it. So if you find a new data source, if you go to my contributing document, it'll talk about you can take one of the skeleton Python modules, copy it over and fill it out, and as long as you just code the way that I point you to with the two required functions, you should be able to add a data source pretty easily. I want it to be free, so far it is. Most of my intelligence sources are free. They may be rate limited, but they're still free, and Python's free, and my source is also given away as free. And output be useful anywhere, and that's why I use CSV files everywhere, because sometimes I'm on a Mac, other times I'm on a Windows machine, sometimes I want to put in database, sometimes I want to put in Excel. CSV is sort of the format that can work anywhere. So I had some personal goals for this project that were beyond just general usefulness of the tool. One is Python has a zip library built in. It's known to be slower, especially in the Python 2.0 range. So what I want to do is incorporate 7-zip, and this is just for me because I wanted to see how I could make a program work with it. To do that, I had to use subprocess, which is another one of my goals. I've seen subprocess used in a bunch of programs. It's a very powerful component of Python. And one of the specific things about subprocess I like is using pipes, because then you can run things like zip and you can pipe in information and pipe it out. The nice thing with 7-zip is you can dump unzipped data to standard out, which then you can read in using subprocess and pipes, which is really cool. And the last thing was I wanted to try a library called Beautiful Soup because in my project so far, I've picked intelligence sources that have APIs in them, Well, I picked one intelligence source in this project that does not have an API. You got to actually go to the web page, and what Beautiful Soup will let you do is go to the web page and basically scrape it. It's a library to work with uh, pretty much any type of web content that you might be handed in a browser, and you can programmatically go in and pull certain aspects of the website out, so that way you can strip out your information. So I accomplished all four of these personal goals in this tool, and I did that by picking these intelligent sources. Now I know there's a lot of other intelligent sources out there, but these were the 5 that I picked for this tool, and I can add more later. VirusTotal has an API. So what I did is I connected up to the API, and I worked with its file reports functionality. The NSRL database, so a lot of times you want to just rule out malware that might be in NSRL. Problem is there's not a web submission, there's not an API, there's not like an online resource that I know of. And what you can do is you can actually go to the NSRL website, and they've got 3 different data sets. They got the whole data set, they've got the minimal data set, and the unique set. What I choose to use in most of my projects is the minimal data set, because all it does is it shows you one hash uniquely. So what it does is if the hash is listed 10 times in the bigger set, in the minimal set, it only lists it once for you, because all you really care about is that it is in the NSRL, because NSRL is supposed to be trusted. So to install it, I have information on my page here about installing it, but you just download the zip, and I wrote my program so you didn't have to unzip it, because why waste all that disk space if you don't have it? It's already 3 gigs when it's zipped, the minimal set. So what my tool does is it actually goes in and unzips the NSRL and does the lookup for you. ThreatCrowd was another one. Had an API, so I plugged into it. OTX is another really good resource. Had an API, so I connected into it. Again, if you don't have the API keys, you can go to these sites and get a free API key. And then the one I threw in the mix was ThreatExpert, because it doesn't have an API. And what I did is I went to that page, and I looked at example output for threats that were in their database and threats that weren't in their database, and I stripped out things that I thought were useful in there and put it in the report. So with that, I'll just mention the configuration file real quick here. You put your API keys in. If you have 7-zip, you can put your path in. Now this works for Windows or Mac. I've tested it on both. All you do is put // to where your zip is, or you put it / if it's Mac. The NSRL, you put the path to the zip that you download, the minimal set. And what it does is it runs through fileintel, and I'll let you go through the code here, but it works a lot like host info. The only difference is with the NSRL, I had to actually pre-parse the data, because what I did is I did one pass through the NSRL database since it's so big. So what I did is I collected up all your hashes and then did one pass through it, picked out the hashes that actually hit, saved them into an array, and then later on, when I do all the other lookups, I look on that array and see if your hash exists. If it does, it's in the NSRL. Here's an example output here. Looks just like it was on the GitHub page. I will show you an example of the output. And what you have here is a lot like my other tool, HostIntel. It's got the hash, it's got the data from each different service. You go across, there's a lot of good information in here. And then whether or not ThreatExpert has it in here or not, the NSRL stuff is up front. It tells you if it's in the NSRL or not. Now, a couple things I want to point out before I let you go. The ThreatCrowd and NSRL only do SHA-1s and MD5s. So my tool will take in SHA-256 and so forth, but you have to realize that the data that we can look up only has, in these cases, only have these type of hashes. So you may want to do a couple runs. Maybe you get a SHA-256, you run it, and then under VirusTotal you find out what the MD5 is, and then plug the MD5 in on these other databases. So just keep that in mind. I try to call it out when it's very specific. So that's all I have. I hope you enjoy the tool. Any comments? I take pull requests, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.